Today is Saturday, December 5th. It's just a little afternoon. Temperature in the low 40s, winds up to 15 miles an hour. It's cool out. I really need to get them transplanted into the ground, but I haven't had time. With the increase in coronavirus cases in Maryland, I had to set up an office in my house and start working from home. That kind of cut into my free time. Now I'm going to open up the row cover and see how the plants are doing inside. I put a couple of bags of shredded leaves along the north wall to help retain some heat. And I've added one more water jug inside, but I'm going to put in a few more. Hey, look, the cat, the kitty. Always on patrol. Well, the plants are surviving. They survived the transplant process, and they got their roots growing. They are growing really slowly, but that's what happens in winter. It's best if you can get your winter crops in earlier than I did. I'm going to talk about that a little later, because in today's video I want to talk about 5 garden fails for the 2020 season. But first, let me get some fertilizer and we'll go ahead and feed these plants. I'm just using a weak solution of Miracle-Gro. These are Tom Thumb lettuce. This is arugula. We've had a number of days where the temperature at night has dropped into the upper 20s, and this mustard has been growing uncovered, and the cold weather doesn't seem to have any effect. And that's one of the secrets to winter gardening, is to pick plants that will survive the cold temperatures where you are. So let's talk about a couple of garden fails. I tried growing tomatoes this year in planters and I didn't have much luck. I grew some cherry tomatoes for the very small Victory Garden in some of these containers. They look like they hold maybe 2 gallons. And I grew Ace 55 and Supremo in this container. This is a pretty big container. It's about 2 by 2.5 feet square. It's almost as big as the very small Victory Garden. And in this planter I grew a beefsteak and a mortgage lifter. And in every case the containers dried out way faster than I could tend to them. The plants were not nearly as productive as the plants that I put in the ground. And the mortgage lifter, which grew here, was particularly disappointing. I thought maybe if I grew it in a container with all fresh soil, I'd be able to get it to grow without disease killing it off. But I didn't have any luck. Mortgage lifter tomatoes taste great, but I just can't grow them here. They just constantly die off early in the season. So next year, I'm not growing mortgage lifters. I'm giving up on those. If you can grow them in your area, they're a great tasting tomato and they're very productive, but for me, they just don't work. I've had success with other plants growing in pots. This one grew bok choy and sage, and I had some other luck with peppers, the smaller pepper plants. I think that's the key. You gotta have a pot that's big enough for the plant you want to grow, and full-size tomatoes take a lot of room, and you have to be able to tend them on a regular basis. Failure number 2 was my attempt to propagate rose hedge. I'll open up this bag and show you what happened. So you can see they just never developed any roots at all. On the bright side, since I put up that fence and cleared the weeds out, the rose hedge has started to regenerate itself by sending up new shoots from the ground. These started out, I think they started out this year. They may have started last year, but they really put on some good growth this year. They're about 1.5 feet tall. So you may be asking, well, if that's the case, why am I worried about propagating when I can just let the rose hedge do its own thing? And the answer is, this particular rose hedge bush has a branch on it that mutated, and it has flowers with double petals. So once I perfect my propagation technique, I'm going to take cuttings off of those double petal flowered sections of the plant and see if I can propagate that, and maybe over time switch out to higher petal count in my rose bed. Garden fail number 3 is the O-Grow greenhouse. Specifically, there's a problem with the cover. This is the second cover we've had. Neither one of them lasted 2 years. You can see there's a tear in the roof, and the plastic is almost brittle here. The plastic is split where the ties were for staking the greenhouse to the ground. And that's because the ties don't pull on the pipe inside. They actually pull just on the plastic. So that's a bit of a design flaw. And the seam tore out along the side of the zipper on the left side of the door. Plastic again is not. It's losing its flexibility. So I looked on the O-Grow website, and they have new greenhouses that have a cover material that's more like what's on my row cover. The material on the row cover has some sort of reinforcing plastic in it, and I'm guessing O-Grow found that they needed to go to a better material. So maybe I'll just order another cover and we'll give it another try. Garden fail number 4 is not something I really can show you. That was my inability to be able to grow lettuce during the summer months. I tried growing it in shade. It just bolted anyway. Once the temperature gets up above about 80 degrees, maybe 85, lettuce just can't survive. So what I found is it's easier to grow lettuce outdoors in the winter. And instead of growing lettuce indoors during the winter with my AeroGarden, I'm going to grow lettuce indoors with my AeroGarden during the summer. And the last fail for 2020 is a philosophical failure. I'm not getting as much out of the garden as I could because time management problems. You know, you plant stuff and it grows, and then you don't harvest it and it just rots outside. So I don't want to complain because we're getting more than we're eating, but we could be producing a lot more food even on this small property that we have. So hopefully next year my time management skills will improve. I'll get stuff in the ground when it's supposed to go in the ground instead of 2 weeks or a month after it's supposed to be in the ground. And I'll flip my beds more frequently, less downtime between plantings. Hopefully that will improve for next year. And the other thing I plan to do is I'm going to harvest every time I come outside. There's always something in the garden that's ready to be picked. So every time you go out to your garden, pick something, even if it's just a handful of lettuce or beet greens or whatever you have. So for today I just picked this bunch of fresh green kale. I'm going to take it inside and cook it with lunch. Don't give up gardening just because winter's 2 weeks away. In Maryland Zone 7A you can grow stuff all year round, and it's worth the effort. Happy gardening.